I'm joined now by Senator George LeMieux, Republican from Florida. Good morning, Senator. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Chris.
Tough to find anybody who doesn't have an opinion about this. What's yours?
Well, my opinion is that the enhanced pat-down goes a little too far for most Americans. I'd like us to use a little more common sense. We all want safety. That has to be our #1 goal. But let's use some common sense when we're doing it. We know that most Americans who've never traveled overseas, the vast majority of them are of no threat at all. We need to use some data that we have. Even when you go to Disney World, for example, they take your fingerprint. Why can't we have a card that would show where we've traveled if we are American citizens? Why can't we take a fingerprint? For those 99.99% of Americans, they pose no threat at all. I don't want my wife to be patted down like this, my kids, my mom. Let's use a little common sense. I think that'll go a long way with the American people.
You know, there are folks who will say that there are sort of cloaked phrases like use data, which really mean profiling. Is that what you're talking about?
What I'm talking about is that we know that the threat to this country are radical Islamic terrorists. And if you are from Des Moines, Iowa, and you've never traveled outside this country, and you're on a trip to come to Orlando to go to Disney World, the chances of you being a terrorist are infinitesimal. Let those folks go through the regular screening process, even maybe the imaging process, which is invasive, but it's still not being touched. I mean, we are talking about TSA agents putting their hands on places that if a regular citizen did that to someone else, they'd be arrested for assault.
We should also say that there are more than a few agents who have gone anonymously on blogs. They're not so crazy about having to do that themselves. I don't know if you saw this, Senator, this morning in USA Today. There was a report that 2 companies that got nearly $90 million in government contracts to provide these full-body scanners doubled the amount of money they spent on lobbying in the past 5 years. Are you concerned that some of the issues, privacy issues, concerns about radiation might have been ignored by lawmakers who were so intensely lobbied?
Well, I think it requires a full evaluation. Look, there's too much money in Washington. I think most people know that. It is good at least that we know that they did give the money. There's also a report that came out in the Washington Post yesterday, Chris, that said that they can distort the images to make it more look like a funhouse mirror than the actual image of the person and still have all the same safety issues there where they can see what might be on that person. So there are precautions that can be taken. Let's use a little common sense. 99.99% of all Americans are not a threat. Let's try to find a system that's going to, let's target these terrorists with a rifle and not try to fish with a net and capture all of America when we do it.
Florida Senator George LeMieux, thank you so much for taking the time. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You have a great Thanksgiving, too.